Hi everyone, it's Hayley from Critical. Welcome to another voice on the More Than Just Storytellers campaign. Today we're hearing from Paul Klotz, who reminds us to take note of the little people when it comes to lived experience advocacy. You know, the ones that don't have all of the resources and fame behind them, but are still doing really fantastic things in the sector. He also reminds us to be authentic and that this lived experience work can bring a lot of meaning to people who are going through pretty tough times. So, no more from me. I'll leave it up to him. I hope you enjoy his story.
Uh, More than just storytelling. Um, as we know, a story generally has an introduction, a middle, and an ending or an outcome. And usually these outcomes are happy, they're pleasant, you know, we're off walking into the sunset. But when we talk about suicide, when we talk about mental health, when we talk about suicide prevention, this is not always the case. And whilst I agree that it's important to tell the stories of positivity and, you know, wonderful outcomes, there is always a flip side to this coin that is just as real and just as important. And that's why I thought I'd just talk a little bit about today from that perspective. And it comes down to a couple of key words that are very important to me, that are used very freely in today's society. One of those is lived experience, and we've heard a lot about that. And I looked it up online to see, to find various definitions, and one that sort of resonated is that it can be described as a personal knowledge about life gained through direct first-hand involvement rather than through representations constructed through other people. And that's the importance of what lived experience is. And so most of the storytelling that we hear today is from that perspective. It is from that individual, but it's not always that happy, positive outcome. But there is another perspective, and that is of living experience. So when I talk about it, I like to say that I come to help other people from a lived experience, but also from a living experience. People have said to me, so what's the difference, Paul? What's the difference between lived and living experience? Well, as I said, lived experience can be seen as the experience has actually occurred. So the event, the trigger has occurred, but the person's learnt and has been supported and has adapted to cope and manage their life because of that event. And yes, there is so much to learn from that and understand from that perspective, and it's really important. However, living experience is a little bit different in that we're having to adapt. We're having to do that on the run every day with the event, in my case, many traumas and many triggers, and not really knowing most of the time on how to adapt or believe in oneself, believe in myself, or what value we bring to the table. So that is a real key component of living experience, so that it isn't the princess kissing the frog and it turns into a prince and they ride off into the sunset all but very happy. This is a reality for many people like myself. Hence why storytelling from this perspective needs to be told, especially as, when I don't want to sound negative or any of those things, but I'm just trying to be real, is that, there are lots of us little unknown people that generally don't have the access to the same support and the same resources as our well-known ambassadors have, that we see portrayed to us. To me, that's a bit of a missing link there in this wonderful story. We need to talk about suicide. We need to talk about prevention. We need to talk about suicide ideation. We need to talk about mental health. We also need to be real. And I'll give you a real life example. Is that 10 years ago, when I started my journey of rediscovering myself, I was approached by a well-known mental health organisation to, talk about my story and put it into print. So I sat there and wrote a 3 or 4 page overview on where I was at that point in time. And they came back and said, "My God, Paul, this is such a powerful story. It's so emotional. It's so rich. It's so real. But we can't use it." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because it's too real." I said, "Okay, so if I use a different analogy, so I've got a brain tumor. Well, actually, in my case, I've still got an aneurysm from a stroke. But if I got a brain tumor, I'm not allowed to talk about that because it might upset people. So what I've got to say is I have a headache. So that's how I took that story. Is yes, we want to talk about it, but we really don't want to talk about it. So again, that's why I from my storytelling, from the work that I do, I try and make it real, that looks at the little person, the unknown person, the people that don't have the access to all those resources and the support to help them, to help them do what they do. So one of the things that you and I were chatting about is, why do I do what I do? Why do we get ourselves involved? For lots of reasons, mostly altruistic, in that I don't want to see other people suffer for as long as I did. It took me 45 years of hiding in shame before I actually confronted my demons and had my multiple breakdowns and many stays in mental health wards, and multiple attempts at my life, and going from the penthouse to the outhouse to end up living on the streets a number of times, and all of those things. I don't want people to have to suffer for as long as I did. I want to encourage and support them to seek out assistance, to obtain that support sooner. So it is very altruistic. It's a little bit like that story of the pebble in the pond. For me, I want to make a difference using my lived and living experience to help others to take that first step, as I said, sooner, and continue taking those steps in a forward direction in a more sustainable way. It's also very cathartic. It's just a strange thing to say, but it's actually good for me, helping other people, in that it helps me learn more about myself, so therefore I can really understand what I'm going through, why I'm going through. And yes, if I look at it from a biological perspective, there's a behavior. So I'm feeling suicidal. So once upon a time, I would then just go straight into meltdown mode. I would then be looking at all the different ways that I could end my life, because it's just not worth it, blah, blah, blah. But now, because of having helped other people and not forcing myself, encouraging myself to understand, I go, okay, so I've got this behavior. What's happening inside my head? What's all the self-talk that's occurring? What's all the negative things that occur, that are being said inside my head? What are the emotions that have been triggered for me to feel this way? And therefore you take it all the way back to say, so what is the actual trigger? What started this whole purpose? So it was about developing self-awareness. It was about educating myself. So by me doing that, that's helped me when I go to help other people. So in lots of the many roles that I do, it's about mentoring other people out there. So it's not about telling people, but it's about challenging the way they think. So for me, I'll say, so you've got this behavior, you've kicked a hole in the door, you've X, Y, Z. Tell me what you're saying to yourself. Tell me what you're thinking and feeling. Why is that? So what happened to get those thoughts, to get those emotions feeling going? So I'm just asking the questions and challenging them. So as I said, it is very cathartic. For me, what's that old saying? To love someone, you've got to love yourself first. So for me to help someone, I've really got to know myself first. So it is very cathartic from that perspective. How did I come about this? I know we don't like to talk about it, but my 12th and last attempt at my life was, the 12th time was 2015. And I woke up in the mental ward after a couple of days being, not in this world, and the usual thing, you bloody useless so-and-so, you failed again, you useless sob. One of the many conditions of, I've got borderline personality, bipolar, dissociative identity disorder, chronic PTSD, drug-resistant depression, blah, blah. So all of my little voices started talking to me and saying, Clutzy, for a highly intelligent man, mate, you're pretty bloody stupid. And I sort of stood back and went, whoa, where's this coming from? And they said, after 12 attempts, don't you think it's obviously not your time to go? And I went, yeah, someone always seems to find me. Someone always seems to turn up at the right time. Maybe it's not my time to go, So what have I got to, so why am I here? So for me, that was the start of my journey, saying I've obviously got things to do, things to give, things to learn. things to contribute. So that's where I decided to dedicate and use the enormous commercial acumen I had in my previous life, and excuse my French, the wanky corporate world, but also this lives and as it is living experience that I have to help other people. So for me, again, it's cathartic in terms of it gives me a purpose. One of the things that I struggle with, and it still happens, every single day, is having meaning in life. Why do I get out of bed each day? So for me, knowing that I can help other people, even if it's just, one person out there, then that gives me purpose, that gives me meaning, that gives me focus to get out there. It's a pebble in the pond. If I help one person, hopefully they'll pass that on. My little ripple that I cause becomes a wave, becomes a tsunami, and that's part of what I'd like to think is my legacy out there for why I get into it. And the other reason behind it is it feeds my soul, my spiritual being of why we're here, what's the purpose, what's the meaning of life, and all of those things. So it gives me that spiritual belief, which on reflection feeds into my mental and emotional chambers, which are empty and damaged. It actually starts to refill those, so that you actually do feel like a normalized person. That's a terrible thing to say, but you start to have that self-belief, that self-worth, that self-value in yourself. So again, if that's how you feel, then when you're confronted with someone that's struggling in life, whilst I can walk in similar shoes, I can never walk in their shoes, but because I've walked in similar shoes, it makes it easier for me to naturally become the empath that I am, but to have that empathy, to have that compassion. And that's the value of lived experience. That's the value of living experience. But again, as I said, I'm sort of trying to come to it from the little unknown ambassadors out there, not the well publicized ones. But having said all that, my reality is that it doesn't always work. I still live with strong suicidal ideation every single day. I come across verbose and an extrovert and full of life, but inside is still that little broken boy who struggles. But what my life is, what it became. But I know that there's no magic light, there's no magic pill that's going to deliver recovery for me. And that's part of the story, is that for some there is no recovery. This is as good as it gets, but that's okay, because it's about being real. It's about saying there isn't that sunset, there isn't that golden handshake, there isn't that frog to kiss. But what people don't see is that there's a direct loneliness that exists. But I use that as inspiration to take that lived experience, take that living experience and say, okay, how can I help other people? And I'm crying, but that's okay, because, big boys don't cry. Well, that's a lot of bull too. We're allowed to cry. That's part of the expression. This is part of the education. This is why I try and do what I do, is that, we all, as you said, we hit the panic button, the red button in the emergency ward, quick, doctor, everyone come racing in. No, there's 4 questions that you should always ask, and never, and again, this people are too afraid to actually have the conversation. There's 4 questions. Are you feeling suicidal? Me, absolutely, because I am every single day. Do you have a plan? Yep. Do you have the resources? Yep. Are you going to do it? Nope. Stop right there. But we say, are you feeling suicidal? Yes. We hit the panic button straight away. No. Look, listen before we act. Let the person talk to you and say, I am feeling suicidal, but that's how I am every day. You got a plan? Yeah, well, pretty much so. Because at some point, hopefully it won't. It'll get too much for me. That's part of being suicidal, is you're actually thinking about ending your life. It's not just, it's against the other side of it. It's not attention seeking. It's not saying, oh, look at me, look at me. No, this is me in reality. I'll try and throw in a bit of positivity to the story. But yeah, I'll give you an example of how one of the times I've used my lived experience was about a year or so ago. I was invited to be a member of a lived experience member for a project that Queensland Health was running. It was about training or redeveloping their training program for emergency staff on how to deal with people that present with mental health concerns or with suffering suicide ideation. And it was so empowering, not only for me, but for them to listen to how we are treated in there. I just gave one example of, I presented to the emergency ward because I was in a dark place. I was feeling very unsafe for myself, and a lot of my self-care tactics says, okay, I need to reach out and seek help. So I went to the emergency ward, and you go up to the little window there with the telephone to have a chat. And and she said, "What can I do for you, sir?" I said, "I'm feeling unsafe. I just need to see a doctor." I'm talking quiet because that's what you do. You don't want to publicise the law. She said, "I'm sorry, I can't hear you." I said, "I'm feeling unsafe." So what do you mean by unsafe? I'm feeling suicidal. And all of a sudden I could feel all of the eyes in the emergency department room, waiting room, staring at me. So that just heightened me even further. She said, "Okay, take a seat and we'll get to you." So, okay, thank you. So eyes to the floor, and you walk down and going, okay. After about 2 or 3 hours, I went back up to the window and said, "Look, don't want to be a pain. I was just wondering how long it's going to be before I get to see someone, because my self-talk and everything else, and I'm feeling even more self-conscious than I normally would because of what had just happened." And she turned around and said, "You do realise, sir, that there are people here with real illnesses?" And I was like, whoa. Okay, so I now know where I stand, that mental health really is a high priority. I immediately left and tried to end my life, which is sad. But that story was so powerful because we were able to use that and then brainstorm to say, okay, so what would have been better? Well, given the fact that someone's presented with, and I acknowledge that our hospitals are geared for physical health, not really that well geared for dealing with mental health. So I said, maybe if someone presents that way, that, okay, we've got to have a different run sheet to go by, a different script, that, okay, we take them to not a more isolated, we don't make it obvious, but we just take them to a more private window to talk to. We quickly identify, have you come alone? Is there someone here to support you? Would you like us to get a mental health peer worker? Making sure that they feel safe, because for people who suffering with suicide ideation, who are considering it, blah, 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 who are reaching out, and these are my words I use 1,000 times, we are looking for a safe place and a safe person to talk to. So by utilising my living experiences, as sad and ugly as it might sound, and I'm sure I know there's lots of other worse examples out there, we're able to brainstorm and say, okay, how can we do this better? Cut a long story short, we did about a day's worth of filming. It wasn't just me, there was other people and all the rest. And I saw the end result about 6 months ago, and the training package is just so much better. And it's just about creating awareness, about creating understanding, it's about creating compassion, it's about creating just a gentle, that safe place for those people to come to know that they're going to be listened to, or one, that they know they're going to be heard and believed, two, that they're going to be listened to, and something's going to be done for them. It's not a matter of asking us to go to the top of the list, because it's all about, that's what triage is about, to identify the risk for each of those people. But it was such a empowering position to go through, in that we're able to give examples that are not from a textbook, that are not theory based. These are real. This is what people have had to experience. So, how do we make it better so that when people do present, that they don't walk out the door and either attempt their life again, or actually, physically do go on and end their lives. So for me, that was, as I said, an incredibly powerful example. I use it now in terms of, I sit on the boards of a couple of organisations, one locally here in Bundaberg that focuses on domestic violence and sexual abuse. So I'm trying to give to the board not only my commercial acumen, but my lived experience to say, hey, you know, how do we make this organisation more responsive, more understanding, more insightful? How do we help this organisation liaise with the government? So when they're talking about funding, how, you know, we're going to provide funding for people that are suffering from domestic violence. You know, how can I help with those things? I'll do a side jump, so I go off on tangents. Part of this is about, and I've just, as soon as I said that, I lost my train of thought. I should have stayed on that train of thought. And I'll come back to it when it comes back to me. One of the joys of dealing with living experience in life. I'm on the board of a large NDIS provider on the Sunshine Coast because I'm supported by NDIS based on the many physical and mental health disabilities. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to give back. I'm a member of the adult-led survivor college for the National Centre for Action on Childhood and Sexual Abuse. There are so many of us like that are out there trying to make a difference in our own little ways. Not that, you know, we want the recognition, we don't want the glory, but it's important to understand that there are people that are giving every single day that are still living and fighting the black dog, that don't have the resources that our ambassadors have. And we need those people because it is about making sure that people do understand that you know, mental health, suicide doesn't discriminate, doesn't worry about age, sex, religion, size, whatever other parameters you want to throw in there. They can strike anyone at any time. Oh, I know what I can say. Yeah, the one thing that we forget about too is that we, you know, with mental health and suicide, it isn't always a direct mental health correlation. It seems to be, you know, oh, suicide, oh, he's got a mental problem, so we just put the two and two together. You know, all of us in our daily lives go through incredible stressful tipping points, be that finance, be that career, be that, you know, relationships, breakdown of one, being confronted with you know, a serious mental health issue, losing someone. We're all being presented with challenging situations. It's how we deal with those things. Some of us have the support networks around us and are capable of being able to deal with these things. A lot of us don't. And that's why it's important that we do understand that there are so many people out there that are either too scared, don't have the voice, or don't know how to reach out for help because of the stigma, because of the stereotyping, because of the shame, because of the guilt, because of, you know, the stupid male stereotyping that we have out there. You know, you know, males don't cry, big boys don't cry, get over it, sunshine, come on, out of puff, all those ridiculous statements that may seem a little wrong to use some of those words now, and I do apologize if I've been politically incorrect, but yeah, we go back to when I was running around with the dinosaurs, you know, when I was growing up in the 60s and that, you know, that's how males were perceived to be. That's how we were told to be. That's why we have such a high rate with males with suicides, which we've been told not to express ourselves. But it's not just the males, it's young kids today. There's so much pressure on them in terms of the expectations, the demands placed on them by technology, social media, etc., that they don't know how to talk to. The breakdown of the family unit makes it harder for those kids to reach out. So I should get off my pulpit, my soapbox here. I get very passionate about these things. I suppose in closing, and I don't really know how long I've been speaking for, how long we should speak. So, but I'll just give you some closing thoughts that I try and act on in my life, and I sort of encourage other people to do in their daily lives, not just in a crisis situation, but in all situations. Is that, you know, we have 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. We should use them in that order and in that proportion. So, you know, we need to look. Oh, sorry, we need to learn to look, observe what's happening, or observe what's not happening. We need to learn to listen without comment or judgment or body language, rolling the eyes, oh, here he goes again. Blah, blah, yeah. We need to be aware of those things. We need to learn to listen for what is being said or what is not being said. We need to understand how it's being said. Is there a change in how this person's talking? They're normally upbeat, or all of a sudden they're just very quiet and low, or they're very light and quiet. Now they're just hyperactive with their words. Okay, something's happening. So we need to learn to look. We need to learn to listen before we launch into language, because that's what we tend to do. We just talk. So for me, I've done a lot of talk. So I do apologise, but I suppose that is part of storytelling. Is that we need to understand that there is the other side of the equation. There is the people that are still out there fighting, either fighting to stay alive for themselves or fighting to stay alive to help other people. So that's my story. Thank you for listening.
And that's it. Thanks, Paul, for being part of this discussion. I hope you, the listener, have enjoyed watching his story, and connect with us, like, comment, share, do what YouTubers do. And we hope to see you at another one of these More Than Just Storytellers videos soon. As always, take care of yourselves and those around you, and we'll see you later.